It was, but we missed. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in as Joshua and I are about
We're about 10
15
minutes
minutes
into it.
into our conversation. Oh my gosh, this is so
Oh,
crazy.
don't worry about it. This stuff happens all the time.
Anyway, hey, so Josh was telling us about his life and growing up and how his experience as a, well, for those of you who are just tuning in because I just started going live, Joshua is an openly gay man in his late 40s, and he's been through the ringer, and he's not woke anymore.
Yeah, I'm not woke anymore. I realize my family is really screwed up psychologically, and I realize that's why the left is screwed up psychologically, so I'm not a leftist anymore.
Wow, you just summed up 15 minutes of conversation in about the fastest amount of time I've ever seen it done.
There we go. Cha-ching.
Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.
Oh, so Joshua hosts the show Disaffected, and he talks a lot about personality disorders. And we were talking about how his experience with his mother had really impacted him. And then later on in his life, when he brought his mom into his home, he figured out that he couldn't live that way anymore. And he made a break with his mom, and that helped him also start to see those same personality traits in a lot of the people that were in the left and the social justice movement with him. Oh, guys, you missed the best part of the show. so as you're growing up and you're living in this damaged, constantly abusive relationship with your mom, and you get emancipated at a young age, end up in a boys' home, which also listening to you go through that was not real helpful.
Might have saved my life.
Right.
Might have saved my mother's life too. No, it wasn't. There were no good options, but that was
was the best of
probably
the
the better
worst.
option than staying at home.
Yeah. So you get out, you bring your mom back into your life for the first time after being 13. You overextend yourself in a lot of different ways. You're on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Finally, get your mom out of your home for your own good and probably for hers again as well. And you're starting to see in the people that you've surrounded yourself with for the entirety of your life, really, especially as an adult, you're starting to see a lot of the same personality traits.
Yes.
Especially cluster B types.
Yes.
Do you think, and I'm sure you've asked yourself this and others probably asked you this, but do you think that there is a possibility as you look at others, a way that you filter people's responses and interactions through that cluster B lens? And do you have to be very guarded in seeing people that way when they're doing things that you don't agree with, or do you think you've got to find enough point on it now where you can tell when this is just somebody being a jerk and somebody who's struggling with a personality disorder?
Are you asking me about how I would evaluate my own ability, or are you asking me what kind of advice I would give to other people?
I'm asking you about how you would evaluate your own ability
Okay.
because of all of the negative experiences that you've had. Are you capable of separating yourself from seeing that in a lot of people?
Here's what I would say to that. And of course, other people are going to have their own judgment. They may see it differently from me, from outside of me, obviously. I trust my judgment today a lot more than I did even a few years ago. Those who do not like my message, they don't like the fact that I talk a lot about cluster B personality disorders, and I've called this, although I don't like this phrase, I've called the explosion of cluster B personality traits a public health crisis. I think it's one of the most important things, one of the key drivers of where we all are culturally and politically, and it's not discussed enough. Those who don't like that message often accuse me of having a huge amount of confirmation bias. What they say is, oh, anybody he dislikes, he says that they have a personality disorder. That's like the caricatured negative reaction that I get back. Other people aren't quite so over the top with it, but say, well, you only see it so much because it's, you're a hammer and everything looks like a nail to you. And I do understand that, and that's something worth thinking about. and I'm just telling you how how I think about it myself. I can't prove it to you. Um, no, I know what I see and I know what I know. I haven't had these experience. I learned from these experiences. They didn't just happen to me and leave me with no tools. I took tools from them, and my hit rate. Again, this is not something I can prove, but my
Right.
hit rate in watching people and looking at patterns, watching them over time, even sometimes just watching how they communicate in a tense situation. Uh, you know, Most of the time, if I'm around long enough to see the results, I think my judgment is confirmed. I think I do know pretty well who I'm dealing with. So yeah, I think I'm pretty good at picking up on cluster B in other people. Yeah.
You covered that a lot in one of your episodes, Don't Diagnose.
Yep. That's
And
the second episode.
yep. And the thing that really hit home for me on that was is the this juxtaposition in society where people don't want you to diagnose, and you're over here going, I'm not diagnosing, I'm just telling you what I'm observing. I'm seeing these things, these are the traits, these are the experiences that I've had. I'm bringing that to bear on what I'm doing
Yep.
and what I'm seeing. So I'm not diagnosing, I'm just telling you what I see.
Right.
And the thing
I
that
can't
comes up,
diagnose. I'm not a doctor.
r-
I could say, Todd, you have narcissistic personality disorder, you're a psychopath, you're histrionic, and you're a borderline. I'm diagnosing you with that. I could literally say that to you, and that is not a diagnosis because I'm not a doctor and it does not go into your medical chart. It does not influence any
right.
psychotherapeutic treatment you may have later. It's just not.
And you might be right. So-
I might be, but I mean, if I thought that about you, I probably wouldn't be talking to you.
yeah,
So,
well, yeah, touche, sir. Um, here's here's one of the things I've also heard you touch on, and like I said, I'm just going to blame the accident I had tonight for not recording on time or streaming on time. So we're just going to throw it
I'm
out
just
there.
glad you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, that remains to be seen. So,
Okay.
um, uh, one of the things that you have touched on is as well that like there is a place for proper stigmatization of bad behavior in
Yes.
people with personality disorders, and but it's not that you're stigmatizing people with personality disorders strictly for doing that. You're saying, look, there are bad behaviors that come out of this and they need to be addressed and they need to be
Yes.
chastised and not embraced. You don't get to embrace these things just because a person has an
Yep.
illness.
Yes. Might be a good time to give people my 30-second or 45-second how to think about personality disorders spiel.
That would be great.
So, a lot of people will not have heard the term cluster B personality disorders. Even though you haven't heard the term, you know who these people are. Every one of you listening or watching knows who they are. This is the psychology of the abusive husband or the abusive wife. It's the psychology of the abusive parent. It's the psychology of the backstabbing boss who's all smiles to you during the workday and then undermines you behind your back and makes up stories about how it was you who was at fault all the way. People that you think of as, and not people who can be difficult, but people that you think of as difficult people all the time. Something's always wrong. Someone's always not living up to their expectations, or someone's always out to get them. These this these are the kinds of people that are described by cluster B personality disorder. So there are allegedly four, although I think most people are on a spectrum somewhere in here. Borderline personality disorder, which is emotional instability, a lot of built up rage, fear of abandonment that makes them act crazy and unbearable to be around. Narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic, over emotional personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder, which is a synonym for sociopathy or psychopathy. So these are the four cluster Bs. People's The problem that people have in talking about this is this lives when you talk about this, people think of the phrase mental illness.
Right.
And when you think of the phrase mental illness, for many people, that the instant emotional reaction is sympathy. This is unconscious, but we have a subroutine, an algorithm in our head. That when we hear that, it's whirring unconsciously, and what it's telling us to do
Yep.
is, oh, this is a sick, disabled person. my emotional stance toward this should be, oh, right? I'm
Yep.
exaggerating a little bit, but you recognize what I'm talking
Yep.
about.
Absolutely.
The- It's underneath that is they can't help it. How sad for them, right?
Correct. Yep.
Personality disorders of this type are not like things like schizophrenia, where a person is literally out of touch with reality and may be psychotic or hallucinatory. That is not what we're talking about in almost all the cases here. It's a little shade over into psychosis sometimes, but it's not the
Right.
main part of this. These personality disorders, another term for them is character disorders. Yes, yes, we are saying that who you are as a person is broken. Not, yes, the very
Yes.
thing that
Yep.
people are saying, "Oh my god, I hope they're not saying that you're a bad person." Yes, that's what I'm saying. That is in fact what I'm saying.
And I think that's one of the struggles that people have is exactly what you're talking about, which is that empathy, sympathy must immediately move into nursemaid, mollycoddle,
Yep.
and not call out bad behavior because
Yeah, because
clearly
they're
they're
sick
not in
and they can't help it. That's
right,
not true. And in fact,
right.
an easy way to remember this: cluster B personality disorders do not qualify for the insanity defense in court. Okay,
That's
these people are
absolutely
not disconnected from reality. There is a debate, and it's going to depend on the situation, and it's going to depend on the person. But in general, they're doing things and taking advantage of people and exploiting people or emotionally manipulating them. And they know that what they're doing is considered by most people as wrong. They may convince themselves that they're doing the right thing. Some of them literally don't care. The psychopaths, the antisocial personality disorder, that is defined by not having a conscience. They don't give a damn.
Oh, yeah, no, not at all. Not
And
at
not
all.
everybody with a cluster B disorder is a psychopath. That is important to say,
Right.
right? But that's
Yeah,
what we're talking about. So when people say, you're sometimes people will say, "Ah, you just got to have a name for everything, got to medicalize everything. He's just an asshole." You're
right.
We're not disagreeing.
Yeah, you're right, he is.
You're right. But the kind of person that anyone in the room says, "Oh, that guy, that asshole, the one who's always an asshole," that's cluster B.
Right.
Yeah, like not in every instance, but
No,
yes.
so there are some assholes out there
It
that are
doesn't
just
mean they're
that.
disabled. It doesn't
Right,
mean he has a special, sorry little mental illness that you need to coddle him for. He
right.
is, in fact, an asshole. But there
And
is a psychological reason for the assholery, and there are ways that you can predict the behavior
and I
and
I
protect yourself from
I love how you make a verb out of things. That's
it.
uh, and that's the other thing too is that that person who's just a jerk all the time to be a jerk is just a jerk. A person with a cluster B personality disorder can get help. They can get help if they want to, and and a lot of times they need to be made aware of the fact that they're not well to understand that
Yeah,
the way you're acting isn't this isn't normal, whatever normal is,
yeah.
but this isn't normal. And the fact that you've been through 14 husbands in the last 18 years and every one of them
Every one
is
of
the
them was a terrible jerk to you.
right, and you're always the victim. Like at some point you're making bad decisions.
Yep.
And go ahead, Josh.
Well, as far as treatment, my view, I think, is pretty much the mainstream view of those people in the know. Although I'm a little bit more of a hard ass on this than most mental health professionals. The cluster B disorder that has the most chance of being successfully treated and at least remitting in part or making serious progress is borderline personality disorder. Although I will say, for a lot of different reasons, the vast majority of people with borderline personality disorder will not be successfully treated for it. So if you've got somebody like this in your life, there are instances where, I would counsel, especially if it's a younger person, there are ways you can steer them to the right therapy, you may be able
Right.
to help nip this. The, if you've got a borderline in your life, you're not going to be the cure for that borderline.
Mm-mm.
That guy is not going to change. He's not. Um, and the narcissists and the psychopaths, forget it. My own therapist disagrees with me about this. He says he's successfully treated some narcissists. I have a really hard time believing that that can be sustained over a long period of time, because part of the problem with these disorders, part of what characterizes them, there's a term called ego syntonic. And what that means is their bad behavior, their bad moral choices, they feel correct to them. They
Right.
don't think there's something wrong with them. They really think
Precisely.
there's something wrong with every other person on the face of the earth.
Because they think they're wrong. If you think I'm wrong, you're the one that's wrong, is really what it comes down to for that narcissist.
Correct. Yep.
Yep.
It's very difficult, and I would say usually impossible to break through to that. And of course, with a psychopath who has no conscience at all, you can't give a conscience to somebody who doesn't have one. You can't
Right.
teach empathy to people who don't have it.
Yeah, so the question that, some of my regular audience, every platform, every show has its audience, and then there are bleed throughs and breakthroughs and crossovers and whatnot that come into this. But some of my regulars are going to watch this and go, okay, Todd, TC, what in the world does this have to do with tyranny and governmental overreach and despotism and oligarchy and all of these other things? Because I did a show last week on Wednesday night. I did a special Wednesday night show highlighting a couple whose daughter we are 98% sure of was groomed for going on 4 years
Yep.
by a man that was much older than her and sanctioned by the church that they were in. It was 2 or 4 years, something like that.
Yep.
And people are like, what's this have to do with it? I said, because all of these things are about bullies. Well, for lack of better terminology, or maybe for a more fancy term, it's really about, a lot of this is about bullies.
Yep. That's right.
And there's something about that despotic, oligarchical nature that arises in people who very often display these cluster B type personality traits.
Yes.
And I'm over here listening to a lot of the things you're describing on the left, especially with the way the LGBTQ plus community is moving, and their absolute tirades about, Nazis on the right and Trump
Yep.
was Hitler and all of these things.
Yep.
But the fascistic way, the authoritarian way that they are forcing themselves into society and becoming the norm. They literally see themselves as the norm. And you
Yes.
have spoke to that. Somebody that we both like a lot just wanted to share this with you.
Um.
Carrie says, "Hail Slocum."
Oh, hey, Carrie. And also with you, madam. um.
so
So
you talk
very
about this a
easy way
lot
to
with your
tell
show.
people what it has to do with it. Cluster B is just another name for cult. Cult rules. Cult rules are cluster B rules. Authoritarian, fascistic, domineering and controlling other people, abusing other people physically or emotionally, extorting them. This is Cluster B is one name for it. You can call it a cult. You can call it a cult of personality. You can call it a fascistic political movement, but we are talking about the same psychology.
Correct.
Yes, that's what it
Yes.
has to do with it. It
Yes,
is that.
it is that. And that's what, you and I talked a lot in the early days of me listening. And when I say
Yeah.
talked a lot, I messaged you a lot.
Yeah, we typed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
We were messaging a lot because I'm still going through some I have dealt with my own cluster B way up above me. But I was messaging you a lot because I was seeing a lot of parallels in your life to a lot of the stuff that I saw throughout my life in different people. But I really started to pick up on this because of the things you were pointing out. And one of the ones that really hit home for me was um, AOC. And there again, you can't diagnose because you're not a doctor. But I was seeing things in her and I'm going, how is she getting away with this? And you started to really point out the affectations in Alexandria Ocasio Smollett Cortez, and yeah, I picked up on that when you did that, by the way. So
Yeah, she's. I mean, that's her. Her behaviors are classic histrionic behaviors. Exaggerated, overly emotional, shallow, glib, um, out of proportion to the reality of the situation, and consciously. There's always a debate about how consciously it's done and how unconsciously. And with a lot of people, I think there are elements of both. I think it is partially performative, but I think that they're also partially convinced that they're righteous in that emotion as well. But it's the use of that affectation, um, and with her in a particularly female typical way. She, the she uses the really small little girl voice, and she makes her eyes really, really big when she talks about when she's scared about something.
yep,
I'm
yeah.
exaggerating a little bit, but you know what I'm
No,
talking
yeah,
about.
but exactly.
And
And you even pointed out it doesn't hurt that she's kind of attractive.
yes,
So,
and she's pretty, and you put all that together, and to me that looks like classic histrionic personality disorder. Um,
and she
but
gets away with it.
well, how does she get away with it? Because this shit works.
Yeah.
This stuff works. There's a reason why you'll find people with these personality traits sometimes rise to the top of corporations. They almost always rise to the top of political parties and institutions. Why? Well, we sit there and we say, how can anybody fall for this? But the fact is that people do fall for it all the time, and I fell for it most of my life.
I would imagine you still probably there's a part of you that has to be guarded so you don't fall for it still.
Yes, and
When you
and a
meet that
war
person you like.
a war inside my head. Are you being too picky? Are you seeing too much cluster B, or are you not being picky enough? Are you
Right.
are you going lightly on somebody because you happen to like them? We all deal with that.
Oh, yeah, precisely. And so that's why I wanted to have you on is to talk about this. And so in I'm running the circles up here with a group of people that's goes by the Child Protection League,
Okay.
and they are doing a lot of research into the LGBTQ agenda in the schools and
Yep.
libraries and stuff. And you have, and I mean, I think at the risk of being cliched, there might be a reason you've taken interest in that, and it might be the fact
Yeah.
that you grew up in the 70s and 80s as a gay guy who really, I mean, you refer to this quite often actually on your show, that in that community you always knew who the sissy was,
Yep.
and people, oh, don't use that word, but that's
No, that's
that's
the
what they
word.
were. That's the word. They were convinced that they were a woman, but they were never convinced in any way, shape, or form that they were in the wrong body, in the sense of no one was coddling that behavior.
Right. So you're talking about the difference between what we in the gay community used to, and what everybody else called when they referred to it a transsexual, right? And it was usually the most effeminate gay man you could imagine, like really, really effeminate, who, for whatever reason, psychologically felt that he could not continue to live as the man he was and had to adopt a facsimile of womanhood in order to feel comfortable. I'm saying that descriptively, not judgmentally.
Right. You were friends with people like this.
Of course, we all were, but there
Yeah.
weren't that many of them. There weren't this whole, and what we call a trans person today is miles and miles away from that. I mean, it's first of all, and here's the point you were getting at. Although these men wanted to live as facsimiles of women and we accepted them, I mean, it's not. What are you going to do? Like, oh, you should not wear a dress. It's not my business to tell somebody how to live their life. They didn't believe they were women because they knew they weren't, and none of us did either. And there was no expectation that we were supposed to pretend that they were actually biological females and always had been. Huge difference between that and what's going on now.
Right. And that has been the thing that
And
has
it was
really.
not children. for God's
No,
sake. It was not children.
right. And that brings me to the one thing that I know probably has gotten you the most heat without you ever having said this to me personally, but I can just imagine. You said there is an agenda.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
There is an agenda, and you spent years as a gay man fighting against this ideology that people on the 700 Club type Christians
Yep.
who are out there going, oh, all the gays are pedophiles, and they which no one in their right mind is actually going to really believe that. Um,
Well, people did, though.
they, like I said, in their right mind. Sorry, but I know the moral majority. But I don't know that they're necessarily in their right minds, to be honest with you.
Oh,
So,
sure, sure, but also people who just don't know.
no,
People
yeah,
in the days when most people didn't think they knew a gay person and people weren't openly gay. If you simply don't know what people are like, you're going to base your opinions on what you're told. So
but one of the things that you brought up was there was open grooming even
yes,
in your back then,
yes,
70s and
always has
80s.
been, and
That
way before my time, way before my time.
right, but the difference is now is, if I understand your points when you make them, is that it's now gone from being a well well kept secret to out in the open, and if you point it out, you're actually the one that's insane
Yes.
because it is very much out in the open.
Yep.
And there can be no denying it now that there is a move, for lack of better terminology, to condition and groom children.
Yes.
And you've done several episodes on that
Yes.
recently. What do you think is emboldened it? Is it the rising up of people who are being coddled in their personality disorders or cluster Bs? Or is there something more nefarious at it that's part of that personality that they're just now able to feel bold about doing it?
I think it's a lot of things. I think our culture over the past 30 to 40 years has taken an extraordinary turn toward narcissism, self gratification, hedonism. I want, mine, I want it now. No delayed gratification, no thought of consequences for the future, just satisfy my urge right now. And we have told each other in our culture that that's the right way to live. Go out and express yourself, get what you want, right? Break boundaries, break the rules. You're unique, you're fabulous. The reason why all that happened is much more difficult to figure out, but that has happened. And then when you take a group of people who here's you know I'm going to confirm some of the things that people. Well, your listeners may be more receptive to this, and they're probably going to be surprised to hear a gay guy say it. Some of the things that people have always said about the gay community have always been true, and here are some of them. And this is you will be able to see why most gay people don't want to speak to me. The rate of mental illness, including personality disorders, among homosexuals is remarkably higher than it is against the straight background population. This is not my opinion. It's been shown every time it's been studied. It's real. Um, we don't have time to talk about the reasons why, but it is real. Number two, I over the experience of my life, I see an extraordinarily high correlation between homosexuality, eventual homosexuality in adults, and having an abusive background in the family. This was something that was well known in the mid 20th century, and then it became unsayable. It became politically unable to be spoken, but it didn't become not true. It just became verboten to speak. And it's very much verboten now. When you combine that with the sense of isolation that young people feel when when they're saying, "Oh my God, I'm supposed to like girls, but I like boys," or a girl who says, "I'm supposed to like boys, but I like girls," and the fact that you are going to get picked on at school because you stand out, when you get that isolation and anxiety together with all these other things, the people in there, and I was one of these people, are very vulnerable to a group of people who comes along and says, "Oh, I'll take care of you. Those other people don't understand, but I'll be your chosen family." Right? There's a cult dynamic to it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get swept along in that, and then it's very easy to build an identity for yourself, and I did this to some extent, but the extent to which young people are doing it now is off the scale. Very easy to build an identity for yourself as a victim. If you belong to a community of co-victims, you get to cry all the time about how everybody's hurting you, and you don't have to take any responsibility for what you're doing yourself, and anytime something goes wrong, you've got a really easy excuse about why it's not your fault. That's what I think is happening.
And you don't say these things in a way that, how do I want to word this? You're not putting it out there to make excuses for or to blame the
Nope.
entire gay community or lesbian community for the things that are being done, because you're saying, like, look at you, you're like, you've moved away from
Yeah.
that leftist extreme. Like, you're not even a feminist anymore.
Oh God, no.
And you used to be.
Oh yeah. I learned.
But uh you you have come to that place where you're like, I just want to be who I am. I don't want anybody to feel obligated to parade around and tell me how wonderful I am for being
Nope.
who I am. I just want to be who I am. And I when I hear you talk about what's happening in our culture in the republic, oftentimes what I hear in you is sorrow and some sympathy for people who are being misled to think that this
Yeah.
is normal, and maybe a little bit of fear.
A lot of fear. A lot of fear and a lot of frustration. Yeah. I
What
I don't
what's
think it's
the
probably any different for you or anyone else in our circle of people who is awake to how bad the cultural rot is. I don't know any of us who don't feel that fear.
do you do you see that the drive now to normalize the the, the agenda that is telling 3, 4, 5, and 6 year olds that they don't have to be a boy or they don't have to be a girl? Do you see that starting to wane? Is it in the near future? Because it's not like right now they're trying to make laws about it and
Yeah, I don't
destroy
know.
families over it.
I don't know. It feels like we're still in the fever pitch of it right now.
To me, I look around at times and I'm like, I feel like we're still on the uphill. They're not even at the
We might be.
apex yet.
It's crazy. I mean, it is absolutely insane. There is no such thing as a transgender child. And in fact, there's no such thing as a transgender person. Whoa.
Well, let me see here. Let me
Ooh.
see. I'll have to tell you whether or not that's approved. Nope,
Yeah.
no, um, nope, we're still monetized. So you keep talking. Um, but
Because no, there's no such thing as being born in the wrong sex body. That's not real. That's a fantasy. It's a delusion. It's a fantasy. It's an excuse and it's a framework. And it's understandable because I used to think that about myself when I was a little kid. Um, it's understandable how people get there in their minds, especially when it's brewing around in the culture, but it isn't true. And how we've gotten to the point where we're not allowed to say that delusions, harmful delusions that will cause serious consequences for people, we're not allowed to call them delusions. We're called abusive if we don't affirm people's lies. This is a reversal. The
yep,
thing about the thing about both cluster B personality traits, but you see, the fact is, most people aren't personality disordered. There's a significant minority of people right now who are, and they are calling the shots, and a lot of people are following along with them and helping them because they don't recognize what they are. But this functions on reversals. It's Isaiah 5:20. It's woe unto him who um
the gay
who
atheist just quoted Isaiah.
substitutes darkness for light and calls
Yep.
bitter for sweet. I'm sorry that I mangled that.
No, that's fine. I want all of my Christian friends to realize that my gay atheist friend just quoted Isaiah. Just quote.
I don't think there's any piece of literature or scripture that is more apt than that right now. This is the reversal. We are calling ugly beautiful.
Yep.
We are calling physical trauma, traumatizing surgeries, we're calling them tender care, affirming care. It's sick. It
And
feels like we're in a horror movie because we are in a horror movie.
the very same group of people in the United States right now affirming genital mutilation
Yep,
were just a few short years ago screaming about getting involved in other countries where it was a common practice to perform genital mutilation.
absolutely. And who is promoting transgenderism in the greatest degree? Here's the other thing that gets me in trouble. Women, liberal women.
Yep.
For every I'm just pulling this out of my ass, but it pretty much tracks with what I observe. Um, for every one man who calls himself a woman, a trans woman, and there are some sick men out there who
Mhm.
really have a very bad and very dangerous agenda that they're hiding, literally hiding beneath pink lipstick and a frock, right? For every one of them, there are at least 8 young liberal women and sometimes middle-aged liberal women who are tearfully, I mean, it's like looking at teenagers from a Beatles concert in the early '60s. It's a religious rapture that they get themselves into. I'm so affirming, I'm so good, I'm gonna mommy the whole world, I wanna make it safe for everybody, 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 everybody. To the point where we've got mothers who are going on national television talking about my trans daughter, their son, who they flippin' castrated. This is Munchausen's by proxy. These are the same women doing the same things to their children as the stories we remember of somebody putting poison in the little girl's soup so that she would appear to have cancer. Why would they do this? Why do they want to do
Right.
it? Because they're getting attention.
Right.
They're the best mommy in the world. They're a big mama bear. We have normalized
Yep.
is psychiatric derangement among women.
Absolutely. Let me let me ask this. So I'm
Sorry, I
gonna
get very animated
no,
about this.
no, no. This is why I wanted to have you on. Like I said, I've been waiting for this for a long time, and I'm glad the timing was what it was because I think it's the year that we've been communicating and whatnot has given us even more to be able to bring
Yeah.
in because it's really highlighted just how drastic it has gotten. I'm going to give you a personal anecdote here. Um, Several years ago in the line of duty, and as you know, I worked in law enforcement for the
Yep.
last almost 13 years, and about 4.5 years ago now, I was pretty severely assaulted in the line of duty. It was a bad night, and
Okay.
I had a fellow deputy came up to me and she said, hey, you need to go talk to somebody. You're not who you were. And I wanted to say, I am who I am. I'm just a bigger jerk than I was before. But she goes, no, you were different, and I recognize it because I've been through it. And so she helped me go find somebody to talk to, and it didn't last very long because of an experience that I had. I'm sitting in the waiting room, and then these two young ladies are sitting in there, and they couldn't have been much more than 15, 16 maybe, if that. I'm getting so old I can't tell anymore. Everybody
I know.
looks
I
like
can't tell
they're
either.
our age or they're 12. That's all
They're
there is for
adults
me.
or they're children, one or the
Yeah.
other. Yeah.
And they were sitting there. Both of them had the quintessential weird snagly hair and colored and kind of short and like gothic, but not like pale goth or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to describe the haircut. It wasn't post
Stupid.
punk or punk. It was just, yeah, stupid. Thanks.
Hmm.
Um, and they were bragging about their diagnosis. They were doing like one-upsmanship with their different diagnoses. And one
Their
would
mental
say,
diagnoses.
"Yeah."
Hmm.
They go, "Well, I have this. Oh, I have that too, but I also have this with it. Oh yeah, well, I've got that too, but I've also got this." And what I started to see there is what I'm seeing, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you don't see it, or maybe you do, and you can help me understand it better. Some of this is, especially with the pansexual and the asexual and all of that, almost to me seems like I'm just doing this because it's cool and my
Uh-huh.
friends are doing it. And I'm afraid for these kids because a lot of times they have parents that feel like they have to affirm them,
Yes.
and they're going to make some really bad decisions. Or these people are going to end up in positions of leadership.
It's already happening. We're there already. That's part of why this society is breaking down. You remember, I'm sure, even when I was still more on the left, I remember this conversation starting. What is going to happen when these millennials get out into
Yeah.
the world, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, here they are. Here they are. They're now millennials are now approaching middle age, and they're in middle management, and they're getting into upper management. Look what we've got.
You will accept this at work because we say so.
Yeah, bring your whole self to work.
Yeah.
You know, politics over profits. Um,
Look at the classrooms with a lot of the teachers these days.
it's utterly insane. It's this weird romper room Marxism. And I mean that. I mean it's
Yeah.
Marxist and it's communist, but it's delivered in the sing song tones of a literal kindergarten teacher. This is part of what you observed in that waiting room with those two young women competing over diagnoses is not new behavior. This is typical behavior for teenage girls. It's that social contagion that we all know about. You remember when anorexia and bulimia were a huge topic on the news shows, and we had, you know, we usually knew girls who had these conditions in high school. It spreads by social contagion among girls. This is a particularly female adolescent way of expressing themselves, and it is, in my view, it's exactly the same dynamic as what happened in one of the most famous examples, which is the Salem witch trials. These are adolescent girls who are facing a combination of circumstances and in their social interactions together, egg each other on, um, become more and more extreme, more and more histrionic, convince each other that they're all afflicted by the devil, they're afflicted by Goody Proctor, whoever it is. This is nothing different. It's the same thing. Except now today we're not allowed to corral them. We're not allowed to guide them and say, no, this far and no further. That's called abuse.
Which is an absolute reversal of the way psychiatry and psychology has always told people to deal with someone who's in some form of mental crisis. You do not go along with them in their delusion.
I mean, there's always going to be an instance where, there may be some acute instance where you have to play along with somebody who really has had a psychotic break in order to keep them calm enough to get them to the next place where they can be properly
Right.
cared
Always
for.
the
Oh
exception that
yeah,
proves the rule. Yep.
yeah, but no, I mean, you don't tell people. I mean, the what we're doing today. I can't remember. I think it was in the 1870s. There was a psychiatric fad called the glass delusion, and it's when people became convinced that they were actually made of glass, and as they moved, they would break. I know it sounds ridiculous, but is that any more ridiculous than some 6.5 foot man with a great big beard and broad shoulders saying, "I was born a woman, I've always been a woman"? I mean,
I knew we were going to get a voice tonight. I didn't know if it was going to be that
yeah,
one.
we're gonna get that one.
If
I,
anybody wants to hear the voice, a super chat is required.
oh, okay, good. Yeah, I'm not breaking out the voice unless you give him some money.
Yeah, there's got to be some super chats to get the voice. I want to hear the voice so people cough it up.
Yeah.
um, so I guess I want people to understand that like Josh he doesn't hate. This isn't a hate issue for him. Like this would be literally the people that accuse, the conservative black people of being racist, having what's that? What's the internalized racism?
Internalized
Yeah,
racism
yeah,
and
yeah. You have an
internalized
intern.
homophobia,
Yeah, you have an
internalized misogyny.
yeah. This is literally an issue for you because one, you care about the gay community,
A
and
lot less than I used to.
Well,
I like hanging around with you all more.
which reminds me, I have something I want to say to that. Um, but you do care because you have said over and over and over again through everything, through the AIDS pandemic, and everything, the gay community has taken massive strides forward into coming to a place where you didn't have to be looked at as to whether or not you were gay. It was, what are your
Yeah.
qualifications for this job?
Yeah.
I can't teach because I'm gay. I can't have this job
The
because
stuff that
I'm
actually
gay.
matters.
The stuff that matters. And you have maybe haven't used these words, so I'm going to paraphrase. What you're seeing is that this is actually having a detrimental effect on those strides forward, because there are a lot of people out there going, see, we told you all along 40 years ago or more, they had an agenda and we didn't do anything about it. And so here we sit, which
Yeah.
could ultimately, if this doesn't reverse itself in a gradual civil way, could have a very detrimental effect on relations in the nation, because there could be a backlash to this,
Yes.
which could be very bad,
Yeah, I'm not
very,
willing
very
to go
bad.
back to a world where it's legal to simply fire somebody from a job for the incidental fact that they're gay, or eject them from an apartment building that they have a lease on. All of these things used to happen, used to be legal. I'm not willing to go back to that world. Uh, and I think that's reasonable. I think any honest person, regardless of how they feel about homosexuality, whether it's religiously motivated or not religiously motivated, any honest person would have to agree that, you know what, I don't have to like you or think that you're cool, but it's not okay to fire you from your job for something that's not affecting your job, right? But it that we may get there, because I think most of the people, this so-called community, this LGBTQ plus SIA question mark gobbledy bullshit alphabet soup. First of all, it's
How
all
do
a
you
fiction.
how do you really feel, John?
There's no such thing. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. And a lot of these people aren't even gay. They're spicy straights, or they're straight with extra
I
steps.
literally never heard that before.
They're just narcissists. They're narcissists and emotionally insecure people who are looking for a brand name, a substitute for a real personality. Right? A lot of misguided and lost people, and a lot of people who can be saved or brought out of being lost. Yes, but right now that's where they are.
Right.
Uh, and I don't, and I have some empathy. Like, I can understand it because I had a foot in that world too. I remember when I was in college, and I went along with this idea that it's not enough for the world to tolerate us. They have to accept us, and they have to accept all of our strange cultural ways. They have to accept the fact. I mean, look, everybody knows this. Gay men are promiscuous as hell. That's not, well, it's a stereotype, but it's a stereotype because it's true and accurate. Gay men are extraordinarily promiscuous. Our culture as gay men is so shot through with hedonism, libertinism, and sex on demand. I want nothing to do with it anymore. But that is a world that I lived in. I did these things. I'm not somebody who just looks in from outside judgmentally and scorns them. I did these things myself, and I harmed myself living that lifestyle.
And so, to some degree, you kind of hinted at this before. There's a everything that led up to this point in your life. You're fortunate that you made it out.
Yeah, I'm lucky I'm alive. There are a lot of men like me who are lucky they're alive. I'm lucky I didn't get HIV. I'm lucky that I didn't get murdered or rolled over by, a gay prostitute. It's when you live a life like that that's full of drugs and look, I don't have to go on. It's just going to sound like
No,
another person who's like, I'm a sinner who's redeemed. Everybody's heard that story. But that's why I care about it, because I
right.
see the downside of it. And today,
Because we're taking the restraints off.
yes,
We're restraining a segment of society that's sitting here saying, "Hold back! You guys are literally destroying our republic. You're taking everything about our republic away. you want to strip people of their freedom to believe what they want to believe, to say
Mm,
what they want to say, and and want to put chains and restrictions on them, cancel them. And then you've talked about cancel culture and suffered through it to some degree on your own as well. Um, you want to cancel these people. You want to destroy their lives for saying things that you don't agree with, but you want all the restrictions taken off of you. And
yep.
to some degree, a lot of the script has flipped. That the people who were once silent before now have the power and the ability to silence others or
Yes.
force them to do what they want them to do, no matter how much they're against it. And I think that's where I'm concerned with, where the backlash comes in is, okay, fine. You want to force me to do business with you because I'm a Christian who
Exactly.
happens to own a bakery.
That.
That's not necessarily that Christians are dangerous, but there's going to be somebody out there
Oh,
that's
I
going to
know.
say, "To hell with you! I'll show you how it goes."
And you know what? I don't blame them. That whole that the targeted harassment. Pardon me, I've forgotten his last name. His name is Jack. He's that baker in Colorado.
You're talking about the Mile High Bakery or whatever it
Yes,
was, yeah.
yes. The targeted, legal, vexatious harassment of this man, the attempt to ruin his life because he won't bake a damned gay wedding cake or a transgender cake or whatever it is, makes me furious. It
And
makes
they
me
ruined him with the power
furious.
of the government.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The government's all in on it. It's disgusting. I don't understand. I don't understand. Yes, I do, actually.
I was just going to say, yeah, you do. I
Yes,
know
I
you
do.
do.
What motivates this is sadism. It's sadism.
Do you think there is they do get some sort of gratification and pleasure out of it?
Oh God, yes. You
Really?
look at them. Why do you think they do it?
I
Because it feels good. It feels good to control other people. It feels good to be the oppressor.
Well, I think we've seen that, in the week since the SCOTUS leak, with
Hmm.
I mean, they're literally standing outside of Supreme Court justices' homes,
Yes.
like harassing them and threatening them, and now they're doing violence
You
to
big
pro-life,
bad
or
white man who
yeah,
told me that I can't have anything I want at any time with no restrictions, and you are mean to me, so I'm gonna make sure that you suffer. It's just,
you
I mean,
just
it's
you just
childish, but
did the
it's not
voice, and
childish. It's it's dangerous. It's
the
malevolent.
voice, and we didn't even get a super chat.
No, that's not the whole. That's the half
That's
voice.
that's
So,
the half
and
voice.
that's.
Yeah,
I'm
that's true.
sorry, I won't slip any further until people cough up
So
the Benjamins.
yeah. Yeah, definitely the
Yeah, put
Benjamins.
a 50 up in here if you want to hear the voice.
All of my fan base is pretty much as broke as I am, Josh. So,
Yeah, I know.
um,
I will
which is
accept
why
a dollar.
which is why I have a fan base. So, um, when you look around, what you're seeing is it's really a violence. It's a societal violence that you will comply, and these people are in charge right now.
Yes.
And we could talk all day long about the silent majority and the silent conservative base and whatnot, but they're in
Worthless.
charge, huh?
Worthless.
Yeah,
Silent
they're like
or worthless.
you're not, if you're being silent, you're not doing anything. Like,
Yep.
um, you had a couple of things that you said in recent times, and you had posted on. Or do you post on Twitter? No, you tweet on Twitter. I don't know.
Whatever.
Um, you had said
I
something
get
on.
suspended on Twitter.
Yes, you do, and then you come back. We're just holding on until Elon takes over.
Yep.
Um, you had said something a while back about where do my friends see me, and I'm paraphrasing. Where do my friends see me on the political spectrum? Because I have
Mhm.
no idea. And
Yep.
I had said I see you as a genuine. There we go. I think that's enough to get us a voice at the next appropriate one.
Oh, hey Ken, I recognize something. Somebody's gonna bring up sweet potatoes up in here.
Yeah, they already did. Oh, see, now we're
Sorry.
really getting it. We'll give him a reason to get to the voice here in a minute. Thanks, guys. That was now I now I owe you half my proceeds for the evening. um, you had said something about where you fall on this, where your friends see you as falling on the spectrum,
Yes,
and you didn't mean the cluster B
the
spectrum. So
crazy spectrum.
and I had said I see you as a classical liberal, much as I
Mhm.
do our mutual friend Carrie, who I know
Yep,
you shared a stage with here a couple of weeks ago.
yep.
Um, I see you in that classical liberal spectrum, and I know that you're probably over here going, "Well, I don't even know what that means," but
No, I think
I
that's
know you
pretty
know what it means, but
I
you
think
have
that's
never seen yourself that way.
no, but yeah, and of course, you know, classical liberal to the US ear may sound different from what it sounds to the UK ear. Classical liberal, the closest analog in US politics is libertarian, although I don't quite fit that mold, although I have a lot of libertarian sympathies. But yeah, it's liberal, but not without standards and mostly concerned with individual autonomy, individual decision making. I used to be a collectivist. I'm not a collectivist anymore. I see the danger of that.
You're very much an individualist now.
Yes.
Yep, an
And I'm a
autonomous.
capitalist too. I'm
Yeah,
not a communist.
right. Um, and then you said something else too, and it touched me. I think I even told you this. You said
I
for
hope it
who
washed its hands first.
it and it had a mask on too. So, what are you drinking, by the way?
um, what form? It's my special little drink for former alcoholics. It's seltzer with Crystal Light.
That's,
I come from
uh,
a trailer court. What can I tell you?
okay. I have a mason jar if you need one.
Yeah,
That's got my
I have.
that's
They are my
that's
drinking glasses
it's
too.
got my
Yes.
it's got my logo on it. So
Oh. So it's high class white trash.
oh yeah, I am high class trailer
Sweet.
trash all the way. I live in the
You
double
know,
wide.
you know, you came from the double wide.
I came from the
On the
double.
nice side of the trailer court.
I did live in a double wide at one point in my life. So, um, but you had said something that really did touch my heart because you said for who you are, and you make no bones about it, you're an atheist.
Yeah,
Um, and but as for a gay atheist, you said I find myself having more in common with and having better conversations with and making better friends. And I'm there again paraphrasing
you're right.
friends with conservative
Yes,
Christians,
yes.
not like left leaning woohoo
Nope.
loony Christians, but actual like Bible believing Christians.
Yes.
And man, Josh, that touched my heart because the thing that really bothers me is the Westboro Baptist types out there that have the entire gay world thinking
I know.
that we're all out here
I know.
hating homosexuals and and it's just not true. Like if for no other reason, I love you as a fellow human being who in my theological perspective are made in the image of God just like I am.
Right.
And if I'm going to point out that one sin in you that makes
Mhm.
you unredeemable and unwashable, then I'm going to have to take a really deep inward look at myself for all of the horrible things that I once was or maybe still have in my life.
Sure.
And I think that the people you find yourself aligning with better are people who have that same mentality.
Yes. And I think there were more of those people than I ever credited. You've mentioned the moral majority several times, and I remember them well. And they really did have a big influence on the culture and our politics for a while.
Absolutely.
But they haven't had it for decades.
Right.
And one of the mistakes I made is a mistake that almost every gay person on the left makes was thinking that Christianity was synonymous with the moral majority and with Jerry Falwell, and actually for like not failing to notice the progress that we had made as a society. I noticed the progress. The world is very, very different legally and culturally for me as a gay guy. I hate that as a gay guy. Because it's not that relevant, but when it is relevant, We are not living in the world that I lived in 1985. And the world in 1985 was a hell of a lot better than it was for people in 1965 who would have been in my position. We acted as if we hadn't made any progress and that every Christian out there was this boogeyman. And it isn't true. And I think the reason why I'm having an easier time talking to people like you, making friends with people who are conservative Christians, is because I believe in standards and boundaries. And frankly, I believe in the reality of evil.
Yep.
I
How
I
we
did,
arrive at what the definition of evil is
yes, we're going to
might be a little
understand it
different, but
differently.
we
I mean,
ultimately end up at evil.
I'm not a Christian simply because it's not out of a choice. It's simply because I don't and can't believe in God and the supernatural. It's just I'm not convinced. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't care what anybody else believes, but it's just a case of I simply don't believe that that conscious entity exists. If I'm wrong, I'll find out at some point. But everything else that goes along with it seems to me that religious people. This is a broad generalization, but
I'm good at
religious
those.
people accept that humans have a nature. And that nature has both exalted qualities and debased qualities,
Yep.
wicked and evil qualities. Leftists don't accept that. Leftists think that everybody is a blank slate, that we're all born basically tabula rasa,
Yep.
and we're just socialized into this morality system or this more. Now, of course, we are socialized. That is what we do. That is what child rearing
Absolutely.
is. But humans do have a nature. As a creature, as a biological organism, as an evolved organism, we have a psychology that includes certain common features. All humans are so very, very, very like other humans. We are predictable. We are tempted by the same sins, if you will.
Yep.
The very things that would bring a man or a woman down 5,000 years ago are the very same traits that will bring him or her down today. And there is, having lived a libertine lifestyle, having sampled that, more than sampled that, I got fat on it. I've seen both sides of it. This is a better way to live. This is a happier, not a happier. This is a more contented and realistic way to live. It is a more stable and dependable
There's
way to
more
live.
joy in it.
Joy is hard for me. Joy doesn't happen for me very often. Contentment is enough for me.
Good. I like
You
that.
know,
I just use joy differently than contentment
sure.
and happiness because a lot of people are always shooting for happiness, and happiness is fleeting, and contentment is an
Yes, it is.
achievement. And so sometimes when you're on the road to finding contentment, which I really respect the way you said that, you're going to have moments of joy which you can cling to
Mm,
for a long time. You can lose the feeling of happiness and even forget what it was like at one time,
yeah.
and um, have a new definition of happiness. It's hard to redefine contentment, and it's hard to redefine joy. And so it's a really powerful. It was a powerful statement. Those two things that you had that stuck with me is one, where do my friends see me on the political spectrum, and two, what is it, I find myself being able to relate to people more, and I've heard you use that language about evil, and like, and not being afraid to call people evil.
Yep.
Like, there is a place for that. um I don't want to end on a down note. And that wasn't really a down note. It was just very philosophical and serious. And so, but we have to come up with somebody that you can use a voice on legitimately, because people have forked out the Benjamins. Well,
Right.
some of them forked out the Canadians.
Well, let's see what we can do here. Why don't I just open up Google News and I'm sure to find a headline that will say something incredibly stupid. And that's always good for the boys.
How about this one? Fox News reported 9 hours ago. A reporter for Rewire News Group called for more violence against pro-life Americans. Here, I'll
Wait,
share
what?
it. Yes, I'll share it. You ready?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, give me something to read and I'll read it.
Oops, I don't want to share the StreamYard, you moron. Not you, I'm the moron. Share my. It's some sort of weird feedback loop. Are you there? Can you
Oh,
see it?
here we go. Oh my God. Okay, so reporter calls for violence against pro-lifers, says they shouldn't have peace or safety until they're dead.
Oh, yeah. Let me scroll down. I got lost in my phone
Yeah,
there.
there's like super more.
Got it? Can you see it?
Yeah, I should have brought my old man reading glasses, my borderline glasses. Um, let's see. Okay. Oh, she's mad. Um, this woman wants some people to rot in the ground. Um, okay. Wisconsin Family Action, a group staunchly opposed to abortion, was attacked Sunday morning when someone tossed a Molotov cocktail into its medicine office and spray painted a message reading, "If abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either." So the thing with the voice is you have to always end on a question. Even if you're making a declarative statement, you have to raise the intonation.
Yes.
The voice is, I was thinking about where that came from, and because I've been doing some version of it for a really long time in my life, like before I ever did this show. It's a combination of Eric Cartman, a Valley Girl, Lumpy Space Princess,
Who's
um,
Lumpy Space
Lumpy
Princess?
Space, Lumpy Space Princess. Oh my God, how do you not know? Lumpy Space Princess. It's literally a lumpy space. It's a cartoon character on a show called Adventure Time,
Okay.
and
That explained it.
yeah, and Lumpy Space Princess is literally a lumpy space princess, and you should look her up. It's a guy doing the voice, which of course is perfection. A, a great big purple fat bumptious cloud with like a star logo on it that just floats around and sometimes lives in space and complains about her parents who like don't furnish her apartment the right way for a princess.
Oh my gosh. Okay, people, you got your voice. And you got a good dose of it too. I wasn't
If you
I
want
should
more of that, watch my show.
No,
If you don't want
absolutely.
any of that, don't watch my show.
Yeah. No, actually, and watch his show. I have a really really good friend out in New Mexico that he plugged him into your program, and he was like, "Wow, this guy is amazing," and he's a lot like me, so he's easily impressed.
I was gonna say, how dare you introduce a New Mexican to my show without warning me first?
I told him you were coming on live tonight, and he's like, "Oh man, my parents are coming through town. I'm gonna have to catch it on replay."
Yeah, I know it's not parent safe.
And no, who was that? He sounds gay. um,
I'm so offended.
it's I want to one, thank you for your time. I know it's getting late
Thank
for
you for
old
having
people.
me.
It's getting late for old people like us.
Yeah, it's I got to eat my dinner, but I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm really glad to be on your show. I'm glad we got a chance to actually talk to each other and get
Oh
this going.
yeah.
I as soon as I'm back on Twitter, um, I will definitely put out the link to the replay.
Did you get banned again?
I got suspended for a week, which means although they don't tell you this, it's but if I get dinged again, that they'll cancel this account too. They banned the show account by claiming that we were fomenting violence and harassment, which wasn't true. Then my own personal account that I talk on too much. I got
Original recipe.
yeah, that's right. So I'll be back on Friday
Okay.
and trying to keep myself
Well,
from getting
I
banned, but
tagged
I
you a
probably did
bunch,
get
so
banned.
I tagged you a bunch going for the show account. So I'm like, he's either going to be really irritated that I'm tagging him in this, or he's just busy and isn't noticing. So,
No,
and
it's
now I
fine.
found out you got banned.
I promised I don't. We only use the show account, Kevin and I, for actual show stuff because my mouth is radioactive, so I'm not going to get our show account banned. That's why I don't
But
say any
but
very much
but
on
we
it.
can find you on Getter.
Yeah, yeah. What am I on Getter? I can't even remember. Is it Disaffected Pod
I think
on
so.
Getter? I think
I
so,
think so.
yeah. That place
I'm
is
not
a
on
ghost
Getter.
town though, you know?
Getter's a ghost town.
Yeah, it's just
Is it dying?
I just don't think Twitter sucks all the oxygen out of the room.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
hard to
that's
get
the
away from
problem.
it.
It's hard to get away from it because there aren't enough people to make it sort of fun and worthwhile somewhere else. But then we all stay back in Twitter, and it's a tragedy of the commons problem. So,
Right. Uh,
right.
I if you ever have the chance, I'd like to have you back on to talk about the thing that had too many roads to tie together, and I think some of it was, um, if I remember the part of the conversation where you were saying that was kind of the I don't know how to describe it, but just the interconnectivity in the gay lifestyle and how it ended up where it's at
Yeah.
and whatnot. I'd like to have you back on
Oh, sure.
sometime to do that because there again, I'd really want what I would really like to do is I'd like to be able to get you to put together a presentation for my friends in Child Protection League
Okay.
to for them to watch and to share because they're coming under all sorts of heat because they keep
Okay.
talking about the grooming issue and how it's bigoted and hateful. And I think it'd be amazing to connect you with them to say here as a gay man, I'm telling you, this is an agenda and it's happening.
Yeah.
And um, so we could find you on YouTube at disaffected,
Yeah. Just type in disaffected
disaffected
podcast.
podcast.
That's your
You
best thing for search engines because there's a lot of things out there with the word disaffected in them. So
and so you're on YouTube, you're on every pretty much
we're on
podcast
Odyssey,
catcher,
we're on Rumble.
Odyssey, Rumble.
We do audio shows in addition to the TV style show we do on Sunday, and that's on your
Yeah.
podcast app. So any app you have will have us.
And if you're gonna start listening to Joshua's stuff on a podcast catcher, please, for the love of all that's holy, go back and listen to the first 10 episodes, especially the first 2 or 3, because they are foundational in understanding where he's come from. I sat in my backyard on episode 2 while I was supposed to be mowing in in the in the middle of a hot day and just literally sat down in my eh, on like my garden wall and wept
Oh my goodness.
because of how impactful it was.
Well,
And
I, you know, it feels sort of weird to say I'm glad. You know,
I like to see grown men cry.
I know. Yeah, no, I mean, if you are interested, the first 2 episodes are probably really important. They're audio only.
Absolutely.
We weren't sure where we were going to go. The show has gotten bigger, and it's more humorous. It's always serious. I
Always,
always
yep.
talk about serious topics, but there's always a lot of joking.
Yep.
But the first 2 aren't like that. There's sort of the
No.
foundation where I explain why I believe what I believe. I give you some examples. I tie the domestic abuse dynamic into the leftist political and public dynamic. So you know, it. I think it would help people to
Oh
understand
yeah.
more why I talk about what I do.
And the link to the YouTube channel is in the description of the video here on
Thank
YouTube.
you.
Um, and I might see if I can find which podcast catcher would you prefer people to listen to you on if they're
Oh,
going to listen to
whatever
the
they use,
audio.
whatever they
Uh,
use. Yeah.
Is there one that does better with ratings?
Um, I I don't know.
You know, okay.
I honestly don't know. I should know
Where
by
would
now.
Mother want
But
people
thank
to
you.
listen?
Yeah, whatever my mother would want, don't use that one.
No, I mean the your voice actress that you
Oh
have
yeah,
play. I like
yeah. You
I
should catch the audio ones
uh,
because we have this really good voice actress who plays Mother during the begging promos where I ask you for money, and she's freaking hysterical.
she is. She's abs and it's almost like you it's like hysterical but scary. It's
Yeah, I know. It's exactly what
almost
we
like
were hoping for.
I'm like I feel like I'm watching a really bad 70s psychodrama.
She's got that whiskey soaked cigarette voice of a lady of a certain age that you used to hear on soap operas in the 70s.
Yes,
It's
it's
absolutely
amazing.
perfect.
I listened first time I heard that I was like,
I
put the
know.
put the hanger down.
I know. All right. Hey, thank you for
Hey,
having me.
do me a favor. I'm going to end the show. I'm going to put you in the room for just a second, and then after the show's over, I'll talk to you for a second,
Okay.
if you can.
Sure.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, and others, because I don't want to, exclude anyone. As Joshua Slocum from Disaffected, please check out his podcast and check him out on Twitter. His content is bar none some of the best stuff that's out there right now, and you will learn a massive amount about the culture and society and everything that's going on around you, and you will start to see that these pieces all fit together for a very good reason, because this is a calculated move, and the left in particular is the cathedral, if you will. Um, they're using this agenda, and it's not just the LGBTQ, but this all fits in, and that's what I really wanted people to hear, is that they're pushing this stuff for a reason, and they don't want us to talk about personality disorders and whatnot, because they want us to feel bad if we critique. They want us to feel horrible if we point, hey, this behavior is, as Josh said, evil. It's evil. They don't want us to talk about it. They want us to be sympathetic drones. We just respond in emotions and sympathy. And there is a place for sympathy. There's a place for an emotional response, but it has to be reasoned and measured through our intellect and through our logic and through our reasoning. In the minute we dismiss that, we end up with histrionics, quite frankly. We end up with people declaring that January 6th was an insurrection, but we can go bomb a pro-life place with a Molotov cocktail, and that's not violence. That's perfectly fine. And that's kind of why I wanted you guys to hear Joshua and be introduced to him, because I want you to go listen to his program. If you are in an abusive relationship, if you recognize even a little bit of what Joshua was saying in anybody in your life or in yourself, get help. Please get help. Reach out. I will help you find somebody that can get you help. I will help you find someone that can get you out of that. And if you're that person and you say, hey, maybe that's me, reach out. We'll help you find somebody to help you get that kind of help. Because no one should have to live through this. And we shouldn't, as a culture and a society, be dictated to coddle to people who behave this way. We should be able to call out bad behavior and call it what it is. So because you guys missed it on the front end, because I was too starstruck, not starstruck. No, I wasn't starstruck. I was car struck. I had an accident before the show started. I got all my coffee up here. You can find TC Pearson at protonmail.com, TC Pearson on Facebook, at Robe Regiment on Twitter. Let me know what you want. It's cheaper to buy 3 bags, by the way, because they ship at the same price as one. But you let me know what you want, and we'll get it out to you. And I thank you, because it helps me, a vet, and it helps the vet who makes it for me, and it helps the family of a vet who makes the merchandise. So if you're interested, let me know, and we can work something out. And as always, until next time, and I'm going to get it right this time, folks. Until next time, thanks for watching. See you next time. Six Temper Tyrannus.
We are go for liftoff in T-minus 30.
Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
Secondary guidance systems engaged.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, it will be on my mark.
All systems are a go. All systems are a go.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized to fire at